Genesis chapter 29. Continuing his journey, Jacob reached the land of the Easterners, and there, out in the open, he saw a well with 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. This well was used for watering the flocks. Now the stone on the mouth of the well was a large one, and only when all the flocks had collected there did they roll the stone off the mouth of the well and water the sheep. Then they would replace the stone over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to the shepherds, "Friends, where are you from?" They replied, "We are from Haran." He asked them, "Do you know Laban, son of Nahor?" They replied, "We do." Then he asked them, "Is he well?" "He is," they replied, "and here comes his daughter Rachel with the flock." Then he said, "But it is still broad daylight, not the time to round up the animals. Why don't you water the sheep and take them back to graze?" To which they replied, "We can't, until all the shepherds have assembled to roll the stone off the mouth of the well, then we can water the sheep." He was still talking to them when Rachel arrived with her father's flock, for she was a shepherdess. As soon as Jacob saw Rachel, his uncle Laban's daughter, with his uncle Laban's flock, he went up and rolling the stone off the mouth of the well, watered his uncle Laban's sheep. Jacob then kissed Rachel and burst into tears. He told Rachel he was her father's kinsman and Rebekah's son, and she ran to tell her father. As soon as he heard her speak of his sister's son Jacob, Laban ran to greet him, embraced him, kissed him, and took him to his house. Jacob told Laban everything that had happened, and Laban said to him, "You are indeed my bone and flesh." After Jacob had been staying with him for a month, Laban said to Jacob, "Just because you are my kinsman, why should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what wages you want." Now Laban had 2 daughters, the elder named Leah, and the younger Rachel. Leah had lovely eyes, but Rachel was shapely and beautiful, and Jacob had fallen in love with Rachel. So his answer was, "I shall work for you for 7 years, in exchange for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban replied, "It is better for me to give her to you than to a stranger. Stay with me." So Jacob worked for 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him like a few days, because he loved her so much. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my time is up, and I should like to go to her." Laban gathered all the people of the place together and gave a banquet. But when night came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he slept with her. Laban gave his slave girl Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her slave. When morning came, it was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What have you done to me? Did I not work for you for Rachel? Why then have you tricked me?" Laban replied, "It is not the custom in our place to marry off the younger before the elder. Finish this marriage week, and I shall give you the other one too, in return for your working for me for another 7 years." Jacob agreed, and when he had finished the week, Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. Laban gave his slave girl Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her slave. So Jacob slept with Rachel too, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. He worked for Laban for another 7 years. When Yahweh saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, while Rachel remained barren. Leah conceived and gave birth to a son whom she named Reuben, meaning Yahweh has seen my misery. And she said, "Now my husband will love me." Conceiving again, she gave birth to a son and said, "Yahweh heard that I was unloved, and so he has given me this one too." And she named him Simeon. Again she conceived and gave birth to a son and said, "This time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons." Accordingly, she named him Levi. Again she conceived and gave birth to a son and said, "Now I shall praise Yahweh." Accordingly, she named him Judah. Then she had no more children. Genesis chapter 30. Rachel, seeing that she herself gave Jacob no children, became jealous of her sister. And she said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." This made Jacob angry with Rachel, and he retorted, "Am I in the position of God, who has denied you motherhood?" So she said, "Here is my slave girl Bilhah. Sleep with her, and let her give birth on my niece. Through her then I too shall have children." So she gave him her slave girl Bilhah as concubine. Jacob slept with her, and Bilhah conceived and gave birth to a son by Jacob. Then Rachel said, "God has done me justice. Yes, he has heard my prayer and given me a son." Accordingly, she named him Dan. Again Rachel's slave girl Bilhah conceived and gave birth to a second son by Jacob. Then Rachel said, "I have fought a faithful battle with my sister, and I have won." So she named him Naphtali. Now Leah, seeing that she had ceased to bear children, took her slave girl Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as concubine. So Leah's slave girl Zilpah gave birth to a son by Jacob. Then Leah exclaimed, "What good fortune!" So she named him Gad. Leah's slave girl Zilpah gave birth to a second son by Jacob. Then Leah said, "What blessedness! Women will call me blessed." So she named him Asher. One day, at the time of the wheat harvest, Reuben found some mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Rachel said, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." Leah replied, "Is it not enough to have taken my husband without your taking my son's mandrakes as well?" So Rachel said, "Very well, he can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came back from the fields that night, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come to me, for I have hired you at the price of my son's mandrakes." So he slept with her that night. God heard Leah, and she conceived and gave birth to a fifth son by Jacob. Then Leah said, "God has given me my reward for giving my slave girl to my husband." So she named him Issachar. Again Leah conceived and gave birth to a sixth son by Jacob, and said, "God has given me a fine gift. Now my husband will bring me presents, for I have borne him 6 sons." So she named him Zebulun. Later she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel. He heard her and opened her womb. She conceived and gave birth to a son, and said, "God has taken away my disgrace." She named him Joseph, saying, "May Yahweh add another son for me." When Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Release me and let me go home to my own country. Give me my wives for whom I have worked for you and my children, and let me go. You are well aware how long I have worked for you." Laban replied, "If I have done what pleases you, I have learned by divination that Yahweh has blessed me because of you. Wages," he added, "and I will pay." He replied, "You know how hard I have worked for you, and how your stock has fared in my charge. The little you had before I came has increased enormously, and Yahweh has blessed you wherever I have been. When am I to provide for my own household too?" Laban said, "How much am I to pay you?" Jacob replied, "You need not pay me anything. I shall change my mind and go on tending your flock, if you do this one thing for me. Go through your entire flock today, and remove every black animal among the sheep, and every speckled or spotted one among the goats. This will be my wages, and my uprightness will answer for me later. When you come to check my wages, every goat I have that is not speckled or spotted, and every sheep that is not black, will count as stolen." Laban replied, "Good, just as you say." That same day he removed the striped and speckled he-goats, and all the spotted and speckled she-goats, every one that had white on it, and all the black sheep, and entrusted this to his sons. Then he put a 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob grazed the rest of Laban's flock. Jacob then got fresh shoots from poplar, almond, and plane trees, and peeled them in white strips, laying bare the white part of the shoots. He set up the shoots he had peeled in front of the animals, in the froze, in the water holes where the animals came to drink, since they mated when they came to drink. The goats thus mated in front of the shoots, and so the goats produced striped, spotted, and speckled young. The ewes, on the other hand, Jacob kept apart, and made this face whatever was striped or black in Laban's flock. Thus he built up droves of his own, which he did not put with Laban's flocks. Furthermore, whenever the sturdier animals were mating, Jacob put the shoots where the animals could see them, in the froze, so that they would mate in front of the shoots. But when the animals were feeble, he did not put them there, so Laban got the feeble, and Jacob the sturdy. Thus the man grew extremely rich, and came down to own large flock, men and women slaves, camels, and donkeys. Genesis chapter 31. Jacob learned that Laban's sons were saying, "Jacob has taken everything that belonged to our father. It is at our father's expense that he has acquired all this wealth." And Jacob also saw that Laban's manner towards him was not as it had been in the past. Yahweh said to Jacob, "Go back to the land of your ancestors, where you were born, and I shall be with you." So Jacob and Rachel and Leah pulled to the fields where his flocks were, and he said to them, "I can see that your father's manner towards me is not as it was in the past, but the God of my father has been with me. You yourselves know that I have worked for your father with all my might, and that your father has tricked me, changing my wages 10 times over, and yet God has not allowed him to harm me. Whenever he said, 'The spotted ones will be your wages,' all the animals produced spotted young. Whenever he said, 'The striped ones will be your wages,' all the animals produced striped young. Thus God has reclaimed your father's livestock and given it to me." Once when the animals were on heat, I suddenly saw in a dream that the he-goats covering the females were striped or spotted or piebald. In the dream the angel of God called to me, "Jacob." I said, "Here I am." He said, "Now take note, all the he-goats covering the females are striped or spotted or piebald. For I too have noted all the things that Laban had been doing to you. I am the God who appeared to you at Bethel, where you poured oil on a pillar and made a vow to me. On your feet then, leave this country and return to your land of your birth." In answer, Rachel and Leah said to him, "Are we still likely to inherit anything from our father's estate? Does he not think of us as outsiders now?" For not only has he sold us, but he has completely swallowed up the money he got for us. All the wealth that God has reclaimed from our father belong to us and our children in any case. So do whatever God has told you." Forthwith, Jacob put his children and his wives on camels and drove off all his livestock, with all the possessions he had acquired, the livestock belonging to him which he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in Canaan. Laban was away shearing his sheep. Rachel in the meanwhile had appropriated the household idols belonging to her father. And Jacob had outwitted Laban the Aramean, so that he would not be forewarned of his flight. Thus he got away with all he had. He was soon across the river and heading for Mount Gilead. 3 days later, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Taking his brothers with him, he pursued him for 7 days and overtook him at Mount Gilead. But God appeared to Laban the Aramean in a dream that night and said to him, "On no account say anything whatever to Jacob." Laban caught up with Jacob, who had pitched his tent in the hills, and Laban pitched camp on Mount Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, "What do you mean by outwitting me and then carrying off my daughters like prisoners of war? Why did you flee in secret, stealing away without letting me know, so that I could send you on your way rejoicing, with songs and the music of tambourines and harps? You did not even let me kiss my sons and daughters. You have behaved like a fool. It is in my power to harm you, but the God of your father said to me last night, 'On no account say anything whatever to Jacob.' Now it may be you really went because you had such a longing for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered Laban, "I was afraid, thinking you were going to snatch your daughters from me. But whoever is found in possession of your gods shall not remain alive. In the presence of our brothers, examine for yourself what I have, and take what is yours." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had appropriated them. Laban went into Jacob's tent, and then into Leah's tent, and the tent of the 2 slave girls, but he found nothing. He came out of Leah's tent and went into Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household idols and put them inside a camel cushion, and was sitting on them. Laban went through everything in the tent, but found nothing. Then Rachel said to her father, "Do not look angry, my lord, because I cannot rise in your presence, for I am as women are from time to time." Laban searched, but did not find the idols. Then Jacob lost his temper and took Laban to task. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is my offense? What is my crime, for you to have hounded me like this? You have gone through all my belongings. Have you found anything belonging to your household? Produce it here in the presence of my brothers and yours, and let them decide between the 2 of us. In all the 20 years I was under you, your ewes and your she-goats never miscarried, and I never ate rams from your flock. Those mold I never brought back to you, but bore the loss myself. You demanded compensation from me, whether the animal was stolen in daylight or at night. In the daytime, the heat devoured me, and the frost at night. I never had a good night's sleep. It was like this for 20 years I spent in your household. 14 years I slaved for you for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, since you changed my wages 10 times over. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the kinsman of Isaac, had not been with me, you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God saw my plight and my labors, and last night he delivered judgment." Laban replied to Jacob, "These daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children. This livestock is my livestock. Everything you see belongs to me. But what can I do today about my daughters here, or about the children they have borne? So come, let us make a pact, you and me, and let that serve as a witness between us." Jacob then took a stone and set it up as a memorial. Jacob said to his kinsmen, "Collect some stones." And gathering some stones, they made a cairn. They had a meal there on the cairn. And Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, while Jacob called it Galid. Laban said, "May this cairn be a witness between us today." That is why he named it Galid, and also Mizpah, because he said, "Let Yahweh act as watchman between us when we are no longer in sight of each other. If you ill-treat my daughters or marry other women besides my daughters, even though no one be with us, remember, God is witness between us." Then Laban said to Jacob, "Here is this cairn I have thrown up between us, and here the pillar. This cairn is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I am not to cross to your side of this cairn, and you are not to cross to my side of this cairn and pillar with hostile intent. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor judge between us." Then Jacob swore by the kinsmen of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice on the mountain and invited his kinsmen to the meal. They ate the meal and passed the night on the mountain. Genesis chapter 32. Early next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and daughters and blessed them. Then Laban left to return home. While Jacob was going on his way, angels of God encountered him, and on seeing them he said, "This is God's camp," and he named the place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in Seir, the open country of Edom, with these instructions: "Say this to my lord Esau, here is the message of your servant Jacob. I have been staying with Laban and have been delayed there until now. And I own oxen, beasts of burden, and flocks, and men and women slaves. I send news of this to my lord in the hope of winning your favor." The messengers returned to Jacob and told him, "We went to your brother Esau, and he is already on his way to meet you. There are 400 men with him." Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people with him and the flocks and cattle into 2 camps, thinking, "If Esau comes to one of the camps and attacks it, the remaining camp may be able to escape." Jacob said, "God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, Yahweh who told me, 'Go back to your native land, and I will be good to you.' I am unworthy of all the faithful love and constancy you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, and now I have grown into 2 camps. I implore you, save me from my brother Esau's clutches, for I am afraid that he may come and attack me, mothers and children alike." Yet it was you who said, "I shall be very good to you, and make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which is too numerous to count." Then Jacob passed that night there. From what he had with him, he chose a gift for his brother Esau, 200 she-goats and 20 he-goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 camels in milk with their calves, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male. He put them in the charge of his servants in separate droves, and told his servants, "Go ahead of me," leaving a space between each drove and the next. He gave the leading man this order: "When my brother Esau meets you and asks, 'Whose man are you? Where are you going? Whose are those animals that you are driving?' you will answer, 'Your servant Jacob's,' They are a gift sent to you, my lord Esau, and Jacob himself is just behind us." He gave the same order to the second and the third, and to all who were following the droves. "That is what you must say to Esau when you find him. And you must add, 'Your servant Jacob himself is just behind us.'" For he thought, "If I conciliate him by sending a gift in advance, perhaps he will be well inclined towards me when I face him." The gift went ahead of him, but he himself spent that night in the camp. That same night he got up, and taking his 2 wives, his 2 slave girls, and his 11 children, crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had taken them across the stream, he sent all his possessions over too. And Jacob was left alone. Then someone wrestled with him until daybreak, who, saying that he could not master him, struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was dislocated as he wrestled with him. He said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The other said, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he replied. He said, "No longer are you to be called Jacob, but Israel, since you have shown your strength against God and men, and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked, "Please tell me your name." He replied, "Why do you ask my name?" With that he blessed him there. Jacob named the place Peniel, because I have seen God face to face, and have survived. The sun rose as he passed Peniel, limping from his hip. That is why today the Israelites do not eat the thigh sinew, which is at the hip socket, because he had struck Jacob at the hip socket on the thigh sinew. Genesis chapter 33. Looking up, Jacob saw Esau coming, and with him 400 men. He then divided the children between Leah, Rachel, and the 2 slave girls. He put the slave girls and their children in front, with Leah and her children following, and Rachel and Joseph behind. He himself went ahead of them and bowed to the ground 7 times, until he reached his brother. But Esau ran to meet him, took him in his arms, threw himself on his neck, and wept as he kissed him. Then looking up, he saw the women and children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, "The children whom God has bestowed on your servant." The slave girls then came up with their children, and they all bowed low. Then Leah too came up with her children, and they all bowed low. Finally, Rachel and Joseph came up and bowed low. Esau said, "What was the purpose of that whole camp I just met?" "To win my lord's favor," he replied. "Brother, I have plenty," Esau answered. "Keep what is yours." Jacob protested, "No. If I have won your favor, please accept the gift I offer. For in fact, I have come into your presence as into the presence of God, since you have received me kindly. So accept the gift I have brought for you, since God has been generous to me, and I have all I need." And he urged him, and Esau accepted. Esau said, "Let us break up and move off. I shall go beside you." But Jacob replied, "As my Lord knows, the children are weak, and the sheep and cows which have calved make it hard for me. If they are driven too hard, even for one day, the whole drove will die. May it please my Lord to go on ahead of his servant. For my part, I shall move at a lower pace, to suit the flock I am driving and the children, until I join my Lord in Seir." Esau then said, "At least let me leave you some of the people who are with me." "What for?" Jacob asked. "Please indulge me, my lord." So that day Esau turned back towards Seir, but Jacob made his way to Succoth, where he built himself a house and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place was given the name of Succoth. Jacob arrived safely at the town of Shechem in Canaanite territory on his return from Padan Aram. He encamped opposite the town, and for 100 pieces of silver he bought from the sons of Hamor, father of Shechem, the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar which he called El, God of Israel. Genesis chapter 34. Dinah, who was Jacob's daughter by Leah, went out to visit some of the women of that region. Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, headman of the region, saw her, seized her, and forced her to sleep with him. He was captivated by Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He fell in love with the girl and tried to win her heart. Accordingly, Shechem said to his father Hamor, "Get me this girl, I want to marry her." Meanwhile, Jacob had heard how his daughter Dinah had been dishonored, but since his sons were out in the countryside with his livestock, Jacob said nothing until they came back. Hamor, father of Shechem, was visiting Jacob to discuss the matter with him when Jacob's son returned from the countryside and heard the news. The men were outraged and infuriated that Shechem had insulted Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing totally unacceptable. Hamor reasoned with them as follows: "My son Shechem's heart is set on your daughter. Please allow her to marry him. Intermarry with us, give us your daughters, and take our daughters for yourselves. We can live together, and the country will be open to you, for you to live in, and move about in, and acquire holdings." Then Shechem addressed the girl's father and brothers. "Grant me this favor, and I will give you whatever you ask. Demand as high a bride price from me as you please, and I will pay as much as you ask. Only let me marry the girl." Jacob's son gave Shechem and his father Hamor a crafty answer, speaking as they did because he had dishonored their sister Dinah. "We cannot do this," they said to them. "To give our sister to an uncircumcised man would be a disgrace for us. We can agree only on one condition, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we will give you our daughters, taking yours for ourselves, and we will stay with you to make one nation. But if you will not agree to our terms about being circumcised, we shall take our daughter and go." Hamor and Shechem, son of Hamor, were pleased with what they heard. The young man did not hesitate about doing this, for he was deeply in love with Jacob's daughter. Moreover, he was the most respected member of his entire family. Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their town and spoke to their fellow townsmen as follows: "These men are friendly. Let them settle in the region and move about freely in it. There is plenty of room here for them. We shall marry their daughters and give our daughters to them. But these men will agree to settle with us and become a single nation only on this condition, that all our males be circumcised like them. Will not the livestock they own, all their animals, become ours? Then let us give our assent to this, so that they can settle with us." All the citizens of the town agreed to the proposal made by Hamor and his son Shechem, and all the males were circumcised. Now on the third day, when the men were still in pain, Jacob's two sons Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and advanced unopposed against the town and slaughtered all the males. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with a sword, removed Dinah from Shechem's house, and came away. When Jacob's other sons came on the slain, they pillaged the town in reprisal for the dishonoring of their sister. They seized their flocks, cattle, donkeys, everything else in the town and in the countryside, and all their possessions. They took all their children and wives captives, and looted everything to be found in the houses. Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have done me an ill turn by bringing me into bad odor with the people of the region. The Canaanites and the Perizzites, I have few men, whereas they will unite against me to defeat me and destroy me and my family." They retorted, "Should our sister be treated like a whore?